My mother was unhappy about the location I was living in. With the limited financial resources at my disposal, I shouldered the burden of bringing up my 2 children and also educating them. I had a very limited number of clothes for them. Although our family was not used to living in frugal ways, both I and my children had only 3 sets of clothes for the entire year. I also used my limited funds to buy books for my children, and I cultivated the reading habit in them. I taught them how to appreciate poetry and literature. I took them to classes. I also taught them painting. I was in the habit of taking them for painting exhibitions in London on Sundays. I also had with me a female Sri Lankan domestic servant to look after my children, and I used to take her out as well to the exhibitions with the 2 kids, unlike other Sri Lankans who are in the habit of leaving the servant at home when they go out. I have had no hesitation in spending money for such a worthy cause. When my friends saw me and my children having limited clothes, they started giving us clothes purely on sympathy. I am proud of it because I have also safeguarded my honesty this way. When my mother heard this, she shed tears. Later, she sent a message through my sister expressing her willingness to send me $300 on a monthly basis. I was contemplating about this suggestion. This was because politically, I was the president of the Sri Lanka Mahajana Party, which was not working very closely with the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. These were not personal but political clashes. By that time, Vijaya was also dead. My firm conviction at that time was that I should not be under any obligation even to my own mother, so long as there were political clashes between our 2 parties. It was I who lost on this, but I lived with my children for 3 years on borrowed clothes. I was very happy living in that manner. Therefore, as a person who has lived in such frugality, it would be very easy for me as the president of Sri Lanka to kick the people who come to offer me bribes and chase them out. As an individual, it is humanity and human qualities which I treasure most. Therefore, for such an individual, these mundane matters are of very little significance. All physical resources are so temporary that what one has today could be lost overnight. One does not either bring wealth with him or her at birth, or take it with him or her at death. Therefore, I have very scant regard for such worldly matters. I would be happy if I had these comforts, but I have no regrets at times when I don't have them. However, the lifestyle I led at that time was in sharp contrast to that of the Bandaranaike family, which I come from, which has been one of the wealthiest families in this country for the last 9 centuries. We discovered this while tracing our family roots. Our families had not been deficient for anything. However, we have shed all these physical comforts while trekking the political journey, which my father first embarked upon, followed by both my mother and myself in succession. This is the contributory reason for our lack of interest in physical comforts. Logically and consequently, this resulted in my ruthless honesty. It is because I have a sense of values surrounding these rigid principles and my resolute commitment to rigidly adhere to them. It is also because I live within this framework of these principles in day-to-day life that I expect the others around me to conform to these noble ideals. I have been able to get many people to adhere to these standards. I convinced them not by scolding them, but by explaining to them. I have explained these matters to the officials who are close to me. I have also told them not to take bribes. If they are short of money, without resorting to bribery or theft, I have told them that during such times of crisis, that I will even sell one of my own lands to provide them with the necessary financial assistance. I have helped them in so many ways up to now, even if it is not up to the stage yet where I have sold my personal lands. Therefore, I do not have a single corrupt official working directly under me.
The highway of a political journey she decided to tread was not a simple straight line. It was not without turmoil. There were a large number of acerbic and obdurate experiences as well. There were neither venues for repose on either side of that highway.
ඉඩම් ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ කොමිෂන් සභාවේ මම පළවෙනි රක්ෂාව කෙරුවේ. පඩිය රුපියල් 750යි.
My first job was in the Land Reform Commission at a monthly salary of 750 rupees. I did not ask for any special privileges despite being the Prime Minister's daughter. I drove in my private car to office and used the official vehicle to go on outstation assignments and circuits. I did not even use government petrol even to travel to office. I was out of Colombo on duty for 5 days of the week, but still did not ask for any subsistence. That is the manner in which I worked. Like now, I used to travel out of Colombo at 6 a.m. and return at midnight. I had absolutely no time for leisure. I even had my meals while working. My officials also traveled with me, and I used to discuss my officials' problems with them while traveling. Even loads of files were carried in the car. I used to spend around 1 hour in the car to catch up on my sleep. This route I follow even now as the president. The only leisure time that I had was during my tenure in the opposition, and that too was at the time my children were born. Soon after the SLFP lost the 1977 parliamentary election, I resigned my post without waiting until I was asked to resign. I did not wait until I was bathed in green paint or made to kneel down. Soon after my resignation, I had my leisure and personal freedom only for a mere fortnight. Then Mrs. Bandaranaike summoned a few of us and expressed her dissent over the conspicuous absence of a party newspaper. There was a compelling need for a party newspaper at that time to counter the adverse propaganda published by the then Lake House newspapers. Though originally it was decided that this party newspaper was to be a weekly publication, I made it a daily. This newspaper was published on an uninterrupted daily basis for a period of 8 years. I played the role of chairman, managing director, and fund collector. There were numerous occasions on which I personally undertook to distribute the paper. Subsequently, this paper emerged as a most successful alternative political newspaper in the country at that time. At the time, there was only the Lake House newspapers. Dinamina was selling 40,000 newspapers a day, while our circulation was 30,000 copies. Our paper has an unparalleled record to date, being the only political paper of Sri Lanka which operated at a profit without the benefit of a single advertisement. We operate it at a profit even today. Earlier, I used a part of these profits to buy newsprinting machines. I did not have any freedom even at the time I was running the newspaper. My husband Vijay used to often quip, "It is to the newspaper that you are married and not to me." It was only when he phoned me in the night that I used to return home. At that time, it was only this newspaper that the party had, and I was totally committed to it. I did not have any friends in the party to help me either. At that time, I even appealed to party organizers to find people to distribute the paper, which they did not. Subsequently, it was I who found them. That was my commitment to the cause. It is in the same manner that I work as the President of Sri Lanka, working up to 16 hours a day. Now I don't work more than 10 hours a day, although it was slightly more during the presidential elections. This is not because I am lazy, but because I have restructured the public service where functions can be delegated. It's my parents who taught me how to be committed to a cause, and I have imparted the lesson to my children as well. When even a job has to be done, my children do it, even if somebody else has not done it.
A rhythm has been designed in the journey of humanity because of the unrelenting sacrifices made by noble individuals for the betterment of man.
කැමැත්ත සහ මගේ ජීවිත දර්ශනය තිබුණේ දේශපාලනය කරන්න අනුව වෙන්නේ. පක්ෂය වෙන්නේ. අනුව බලයට දාලා මට තනතුරු ඕනේ නැහැ. මට මගේ ජීවිතයේ ලස්සන දේවල් තියෙනවා මම කැමති දේවල් ඒවා කරගෙන ඉන්න.
My plan from the early days was to do politics on behalf of others as well as for our party. I never aspired for political positions. I was wanting to groom others. I was wanting to pursue my interests. However, this did not materialize. I was gradually drawn into electoral politics. When I left the country, I had not even decided about returning, although I detest settling down abroad. However, there were a large number of my political colleagues, some of whom are my deputy ministers today, who flew to London at their own expense to persuade me to return to Sri Lanka and to take to active politics. Some of them even persuaded me by telephone. However, I was not willing to drop the idea of pursuing my unbridled desire to serve the masses, as it was firmly entrenched in me. At that time, my party supporters and colleagues were lamenting that there were mass-scale killings by President Premadasa, the JVP and the LTTE. We have nowhere to go, they said. You have deserted us. We have nobody. There's nothing else we can do other than politics. Our supporters are coming behind us. Strictly, it was due to only one valid reason that I changed my mind. My children lost their father due to politics. I was not prepared at any cost to make them lose their mother as well for the same reason. I know how much my children suffered. My children saw their father being shot in front of their own eyes. It was with the greatest difficulty that I eradicated that fear from the minds of my two children. I had to play the role of a psychiatrist to my children, while I too was suffering from this trauma. I was not prepared to undergo that all over again. During our stay in London, all were sleepless nights. It was a very difficult decision for me to take during those 2 months. I was used to suddenly waking in the middle of the night, petting the children, and starting to cry before I returned to sleep. Normally, I'm very quick at taking decisions, as I have a clear-cut policy. In the end, I consented to return to Sri Lanka, despite vociferous protests from my two children. My children were aghast, thinking that the fate that befell their father would befall their mother as well. I'm sure the people are well aware of the events that followed my return. I was forcibly redrawn to the SLFP despite my flat refusal. The reason was that I did not want to clash with my brother Anura. However, my mother and a large number of ministers today pressurized me to take to politics because the party leadership was seen to be weak. I rejoined the SLFP in 1991, and it was at about the same time that the PA was established. The forces within the SLFP, which were hitherto divided, reunited. Then I forgave all those who showed open enmity towards me and brought them under one group. Consequently, I became Chief Minister, Prime Minister, and then President. The principal reason underpinning the UNP being in power for 17 consecutive years was due to the squabbles and factions in the SLFP, which was the main opposition party at that time. The person who was instrumental in fragmenting the SLFP was former President J.R. Jayawardena. Even after losing the parliamentary elections in 1977, we fortified ourselves through the Dinakara newspaper and through party reorganization. It was then that President J.R. Jayawardena stripped Mrs. Bandaranayake of her civic rights. President Jayawardena first split Anura and Maithripala Senanayake in 1980, making them come under two factions. Then the UNP leadership victimized everybody who was opposed to the UNP. I personally witnessed all these developments between 1980 and 1993. I too was a victim. I really sympathized with Mrs. Bandaranayake, not because she was my mother, but as Prime Minister. As a daughter, I gave her all assistance and affection at home. I decided to help my mother's party because she was the strongest leader in our party. If there was an alternative leader, I would have supported that person, asking my mother to stay at home. I returned to the party with the firm resolve of not allowing the party to disintegrate further for whatever reason. Subsequently, I managed to unite all the people within the party who were hostile towards me earlier. It was purely for the sake of the masses and their interest that I resolved to even smile and make peace with these politicians and party leaders who were, up to then, insulting me in the extremes of perverse language. In this process of uniting the people, I totally lost my individuality. We successfully managed to bring all opposition political parties of that time under one banner and under the leadership of Mrs. Bandaranaike.
The topmost story of the House of Human Life is built on the foundation of noble qualities. Its beauty rests on its firm foundation.
මම විශ්වාස කරන දෙයක් ඉතා ශක්තිමත් ලෙස මිනිසා ගැන. මිනිසාගේ අසීමිත ගුණ මහිමය ගැන මගේ විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මිනිසා කියන මේ
I am of the firm belief of the boundless human qualities of man. As the human being is on the highest strata in the animal kingdom, I am also convinced of the creative genius of man, in addition to his normal qualities. If man uses both his wisdom and his heart to further develop his creative skills and his noble qualities, then he is equivalent to a god. This has been stated in Buddhism as well. This firm belief has given me an abundance of strength, especially in moments of anguish. Therefore, this has given me a lot of self-confidence and also confidence in others at all times. Therefore, I firmly believe that human beings could be transformed if one talks to their hearts and minds. However, there are times where I have gone wrong with this theory too. There have been instances in the recent past where I have realized that some individuals are beyond redemption. Therefore, I have developed the practice of establishing a dialogue between individuals without punishing them or sidelining them. I have done this both in my political and personal lives. As President of Sri Lanka, I have spent many hours in dialogue with such persons. Whenever public officials have been branded as UMP and when they have been recommended to be removed from office due to allegations of sabotage, I first have a dialogue with them. Then I transfer them to places with different responsibilities where they cannot continue their acts of sabotage. However, I do not have them dismissed. Secondly, one of my most firm convictions and principles revolve around freedom. One of the most important aspects of freedom is material freedom. Even a man who is in prison, when his hands and legs are tied, should have the freedom to think freely. That is the greatest benefit a human being can derive. Further, South African President Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years, but nobody could inhibit his powers to think and the boundless human qualities in his heart. That is why Nelson Mandela could walk out of prison as one of the greatest human beings. He did not allow his opponents to suppress his creative thinking and his benevolence. Therefore, human freedom is a very special prerequisite to accomplishing the nobility of man. At the time my government assumed office, human freedom had been totally vanquished in every segment of society. This includes the right to life and the freedom of media. I and my government have given priority to restoring these norms as we have a firm conviction in them. It is because the UNP government ruined human freedom in their 17-year rule that this country has been internationally branded as a nation that does not respect human rights. I had the strength to understand this because I had a clear political vision. That is why my government gave the topmost priority to human freedom in this country. I firmly believe that it is important to provide human freedom also to our political opponents. I still believe that I and my government took correct decisions. I also believe that every man and woman in this country should have a vision and a goal for deciding where he or she should be going. In this context, there are those who want to pursue professional careers, while others take to the arts. Some lie idle. On the other hand, there are others whose only objective is to increase their wealth while thinking of only material comfort. There are still others whose political vision is to cling on to political power and amass what they can through bribery, irrespective of what happens to the poor masses. That is their way of thinking. Further, it was not difficult for me to formulate my political vision from my early childhood. Our parents had shown us the correct path from our childhood. We saw with our own eyes the noble and tremendous sacrifices our parents made.
If any human life has the virtue of sacrifice at the top of the agenda, all other residues become undoubtedly null and void. For a life which has brought nobility from its heredity, committing sacrifices on behalf of others is only a simple equation.
කැපවීම ගැන මගේ ලොකු විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා. ඕනෑම කෙනෙක් තමා කරන ඕනෑම දෙයකට සම්පූර්ණයෙන් 100% කැපවී කටයුතු කළ යුතුයි කියලා මම හිතනවා. ජීවිතේ ඉතා කෙටි. මට ඊයේ පෙරේදා ඒක කොයිතරම් කෙටිද කියලා තවත් තේරුණා. කෙටි වෙන්න.
I strongly believe in being committed to a cause. I also believe that an individual should have a 100 to 200% commitment while engaged in a task. Life is very short, and I realized how short it could be in the recent past. It is useless if we are not committed to our actions, even over a lifetime. I'm proud to be brave as well. I detest cowards. However, it is for others to decide as to whether I am brave or not. I have also had the courage to spell out eloquently what my actions were going to be, and also to fearlessly act in accordance with what I spelt out when faced with daunting challenges. That too I learnt from my parents. Irrespective of what they say, I do what I believe is right. This principle has been a tremendous boon to me. On the other hand, there had been instances where leaders in our party have been angry with me over this. But I can't help it. I never compromised a principle at any cost. I have never uttered any untruths, either in my personal life or my political life. I have always spelt out only what I am convinced of, irrespective of whether they are correct or incorrect. If I am not convinced of something, I don't say it at all. I ask people not to ask me about it.
To be in agreement with one's conscience and to act in accordance with it is a premonition in success. Similarly, honesty is also a catalyst for success in life.
අවංකකම විශ්වාස කරන දේ තමා අගයන දේ අවංකව ප්‍රකාශ කිරීමට සහ කිරීමත් ඉටු කිරීමත් මුදල්මය අවංකකමක් කියන එක මගේ ජීවිතේ ඉතාමත් වැදගත් දෙයක්.
Honesty, to be able to fearlessly proclaim my convictions and senses of values while also being ruthlessly honest in relation to financial dealings, have been the hallmarks of my life. I totally detest thieves. I have never stolen even a trivial thing during my entire life. That is our breeding. We only give. We didn't take anything at all.
The virtue of observing and grasping of something in its correct perspective is an immortal legacy, a noble father treasured in the soul of the daughter. That is how it should be.
මම හුඟක් ගරු කරන මගේ ජීවිතේ මම හුඟක් අගය කරන දෙයක් ලෙන්ගතුකම කියන දේ.
Affection is a virtue which I have held in high esteem and with respect. I showed proper affection to my friends, my officials, and the people. I have never forgotten anybody who provided me even with the smallest help. Even if there were instances in the past where I have temporarily forgotten such instances, I have recalled some of these people from distant villages, even after a lapse of a year or two.
The media is the forerunner of knowledge. However, that certificate is not applicable to everybody. Even the media will travel backwards when it is in the wrong hands.
මගේ විශාල විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා මාධ්‍ය කියන මේ දේ ගැන මාධ්‍යයේ තියෙන අතිශයින් ශක්තිමත් වටිනා කාර්යභාරය පිළිබඳ මගේ විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා.
I am firmly convinced that the media has a tremendous responsibility. I have the profound belief of the predominant and vibrant role that the media is expected to play. I too have done media studies. That is the reason why my government totally restored the freedom of the media, which was in a shambles during the previous regime. During the tenure of the last government, we have staged protest marches and demonstrations accompanied by our friends in the media. We have also been assaulted by the police. However, we restored media freedom when we came into power. It is most unfortunate from the point of view of the masses that there are few individuals in this media who have grossly abused this freedom. This section of the media has attacked my government and me personally in the most despicable manner during the last 5 years. During the recently concluded presidential polls campaign, they have also hurled the lowest forms of abuse at me, not only from the point of view of a woman, but also from that of any human being. There is not even an iota of truth in these wild allegations. The year 1999 was an election year, and these allegations were continuously hurled at me throughout the entire year. However, I neither succumbed nor wilted. I did not take any action yet. I patiently observed. Why? I will resort to legal action later over these allegations. I cannot let this section of the media continue to deceive the public. I will not permit certain sections of the media and the UNP to destroy the hard-earned human freedom which we gained by tremendous sacrifices, which includes the shedding of blood, sweat and tears. I was firmly convinced that the public and the voters in particular will act firmly and independently without wilting under pressure from these allegations. There are remarkable similarities between media personnel and artists. The responsibility of media is to accurately present events and their details which occur in this country and overseas. That is the sole responsibility of the media. It is also the responsibility of the media to apprise the public of developments in the sciences and the arts, technology, human philosophy, and religious philosophy. Instead, what do certain sections of the media do? These people, in the name of media freedom, have totally transformed this noble profession into prostitution, after we removed all the shackles by which the media was tied until we assumed office. It is not with malice or prejudice that I am saying this. Firstly, I say this in my capacity as a specialist in political science. Secondly, I am saying it in my capacity as a responsible Sri Lankan who has the ability to grasp matters correctly. It is only thirdly that I speak in my capacity as President of Sri Lanka. It is with the utmost regret that I say that the political culture which was inculcated by the UNP, which borders on violence and venom, has been infiltrated to the public totally through private media. There have been instances where I have bowed my head and asked for forgiveness even from my domestic servants if I have found fault with them without a valid reason. However, I have revolted against injustice. That is the degree of humility I have. This is a lesson which I have learnt from my father. I have apologized even to the poorest of poor, conceding that I had made a mistake. However, I have revolted against injustice and impropriety. I act against these vices in the most democratic and legal manner.
In her journey through life, she did not abandon either the sighs she experienced as a mother or the agony she experienced as a wife. Her mind was also rigidly endured the warmth of the tears of her two fatherless children. The pains of wives who have lost their husbands have also reverberated in her mind.
මේ අපේ රජයේ දර්ශනය සහ ක්‍රියාදාමය සකස් කරනකොට මමවත් මගේ රජයේ කිසි ඇමති කෙනෙක්වත් අපේ පෞද්ගලිකත්වය ගැන හිතලා නෙමෙයි මේ දර්ශනය හැදුවේ.
Neither I nor any minister in my government had sought to pursue our individualities at the time we formulated the vision of our government. We did not consider what financial benefit a minister could derive or how much longer I could cling on to power when we formulated our policies. The criteria which we decided to take into account at the time we formulated our vision, policies and proposed courses of action revolved around purely on providing maximum benefits which would accrue to the masses and the factors which were required to salvage this nation. However, I honestly concede that there may be instances where my judgment may have been wrong. However, I am an individual who can face criticism. I have had open discussions with my officials and I allow them to criticize me. Only my ideas and not my privacy. My ministers have been extremely critical of me when we discuss policy matters. I allow my ministers to openly discuss and debate the cabinet papers that are presented. Similarly, I am convinced after analyzing that 75% of policies are accurate, though 25% may be wrong. The process of implementation of these projects is also correct, but have been probably stalled due to officials being either inert or corrupt. That is the reason why these projects have not had their desired effect, despite the path and the method being correct.
The tragedy of one generation going astray through ignorance should not be made to keep on repeating itself. The compelling need for a resourceful program for youth cannot be forgotten or underestimated, as it would lead to a social calamity.
මේ රටේ අතරමං වෙලා හිටපු තරණ පරපුරට සමෘද්ධි ව්‍යාපාරය ඉතා සාර්ථකව ඉදිරියට යනවා.
In my opinion, the Samurdhi program was a great boon to the youth who had hitherto gone astray. This program has been moving forward very successfully. These youth who were originally taking to arms and ammunition now have a benevolent path to tread. It is I and Minister S.B. Dissanayake who formulated this program before we came to office. Though this project is moving forward very successfully, there is more to be done in the future. There have been numerous occasions where I have summoned Minister S.B. Dissanayake and relevant ministry officials to discuss various matters connected to the Samurdhi program. Lots of other programs have to be completed too, as we want to broad-base this program. Another one of my favorite projects is the Educational Reforms Program, to which we have given a lot of emphasis. None of the government programs for the future can be successfully continued without the Samurdhi program and the Education Reforms Program. That is the reason why the UNP showed lots of hostility to it. Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe earlier cynically alleged that the educational reforms which I propounded were Chandrika's aristocratic policies. Now all the parents and teachers and students are praising these reforms. These reforms are diametrically opposite to aristocratic principles. This is because the privileges in the education sector, which were restricted all these years to a few Colombo schools, are now being provided to all the schools island-wide. This is not aristocracy, but equality.
The contribution she makes towards rectifying Sri Lanka's sullied international image is by no means small.
මේ ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ ප්‍රෞಢ රටට නැවත වතාවක් මම ලාංකිකයෙක් කියලා කිසිම ලැජ්ජාවකින් තොරව ප්‍රෞಢත්වයෙන් කොන්ද කෙලින් තියාගෙන හිස ඔසවාගෙන ලෝකේ ඕනෑම තැනකට
Today, it gives me great pride to travel to any part of the world with my head held high as a Sri Lankan. I am indeed proud that our government was able to lay the foundation for this. Because of the prudent action we took in matters relating to foreign policy, I am today the chairperson of two very powerful international bodies, SAARC and the G24, which is a very globally powerful economic body affiliated to the United Nations. Sri Lanka, as a small and impoverished nation, has successfully managed to win international acclaim. This is all the more significant and dramatic because it came at a time when international opinion of Sri Lanka up to that time was very adverse.
Leadership should be a symbol of perfection. Leadership is born when all contributory factors are embedded in it. True leadership can be compared only with true leadership.
එකක් ඕනම සංවිධානයක තේ කඩේක හරි උන්චි එකේ ඉඳලා ලොකු සංවිධානයක් දක්වා ඒ සංවිධානයේ ආයතනයේ නායකත්වයේ දරන කෙනා ශක්තිමත් විය යුතුයි අවංක විය යුතුයි දර්ශනයක් තිබිය යුතුයි ජීවිතය පිළිබඳ ප්‍රතිපත්ති තිබිය
A
යුතුයි.
person who assumes leadership of an organization, ranging from a small tea boutique to a large organization, should be strong in character. That person should also be honest. That person should also have a philosophy. That person should also have principles relating to life. This is the first time I have spoken of my personal convictions in public. Even my cabinet ministers have not heard these. That is because I have not spoken of myself all this time. But today, I decided to speak in public. Had I died from that bomb, nobody would have known these things. Our biggest strength has been the boundless confidence and trust that the people have placed in me and my government. We did not have money. There are no corrupt businessmen to nurture us. We are not prepared to use firearms, and we do not need to suppress people through firearms and ammunition, as we are strong in character. It is the unshaking confidence that the common man had in me and my government which has been our biggest strength. Also, the uninterrupted and unstinted support that the working class of this country gave us. Even the farming community supported us, despite being swamped with problems. Even the student community supported us. During the last 30 years, it was during our government that the universities were the least closed. A large number of intellectuals and artists also greatly supported us. Even a significant number of professionals supported us. Only a few media personnel, a good majority of public servants, a good majority of the 3 armed forces also placed their confidence in us, despite all the untold hardships they faced in implementing government policy.
The entire social fabric rallied round this unparalleled leadership because of its special features and its sincere, people-friendly qualities.
දේශපාලනයට ආපුවමත් මගේ දර්ශනයක් තිබුණා. අපේ රජයේ දර්ශනයක් තිබුණා. ඒ දර්ශනය අනුව අපිට ඉලක්ක ගන්නවා.